Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Live and Give show. I am Nguyen alongside my co-host and lover, Jaime Gonzalez. So today's topic is going to be the top 5 success killers. It's going to be an interesting episode. So tune in.
Welcome to the Live and Give show with Dr. Jaime Gonzalez and Dr. Nguyen. Join us as we share our experiences and those of other experts in their fields who've discovered financial security while creating a pathway towards giving back to others.
All right. So today the last 2 episodes, we talked about our journey of going from a negative net worth to, an 8-figure. But I figure what would be good to follow up alongside that would be, what are actually some of the top success killers that we commonly see that maybe we ourselves have experienced too, but we see this commonly among others, right? And so the first one we'll talk about today, I think is a very common one, is living in the past, right? It's really easy for us to kind of identify ourselves with something that happened, whether it's from childhood, and even if it isn't way back from our childhood, even as something is just a few years ago, and not being able to move forward because something happened to us or there was a previous failure that it kind of triggers a certain emotion that kind of is a blockage for us to move forward in our decision making. What have you experienced as an example of something where you might have lived in the past and it kind of was a blocking, from part of your success?
Well, I would say just my childhood kind of growing up, like we've said on some episodes, I didn't have a mentor. I didn't grow up with, I was in middle class. I was pretty much in the lower class growing up. My environment and my friends were not, knowledgeable and successful. Their parents were, working, 2, 3 jobs. So I think just getting through that, I think for me, I would be living in the past, all the time. I didn't want to spend any money at first, so I would want to make sure I was very, very tight. The first couple years, I mean, because we didn't have any money. But, being very conscious of not spending or not treating yourself. But I think just the childhood, that was a big block for me, just getting through that and kind of thinking a whole lot different compared to, what I was taught, and what I experienced. So, but, it's thinking smaller, so initially whenever we went into our eye care practices, so at first, I was comfortable working for someone, the first few years, and I didn't have bigger goals, so I was thinking small, I was thinking, oh yeah, I'm making a pretty good amount of income, and I'm happy, and, I'm happy where I'm living, and, we would get to travel every once in a while. But yeah, it's just the thinking small aspect of it,
Now, aside from the financial aspect of living in the past, if you were to have somebody who's listening in, who's struggling with some of that, because maybe they've experienced some negative things in their past. And I think all of us, and to some degree, have experienced something in our personal and professional life, right? And that if we live onto that, it makes it hard to want to take that next step. Let's pivot away from the financial for a minute, and let's talk a little bit on the personal side. Like, say for instance, if you have always been very shy, right? And that's something that I've dealt with, right? In the personal, living in the past, where I felt like I had to suppress my emotions because I needed to put a strong front on. But I kept to myself. I was very quiet. I was very private, right? And so, but it took a lot of, I think, self development and inner work in order to be able to expand, because I don't think we've been able to succeed personally or professionally had I not continued with my personal self development journey, right?
Hmm.
And so, what would you advise someone who is maybe in a similar position to where I was, right? Who is listening in, who has so much passion, and they haven't quite reached their potential, and they know they have barely scratched the surface of their true potential, and they're listening in. What would be some of your advice that you think can help them kind of take that next step, at least, right? To
Hmm.
kind of help them go away from living in that past, labeling themselves as such as I'm quiet, I'm shy, that I don't have much, what you say is that one next step that they can do. Anything come to your mind?
Well, I can speak from experience with you,
Yeah.
So, I mean, because whenever we would go to events, you didn't want to speak to anyone besides me, if that.
I would speak to
But no, and whenever we would, because we had to go to conferences, we had to take a lot of continuing education, so we were around people, a lot, right? So, but I think just being open, to some guidance, because you were not open to any guidance initially,
Mhm.
so you were set in your ways. You were set in your ways with other, just speaking to people. You were set in your ways of, trying out new food. You were set in your ways
Mhm.
to, dressing a certain way, and not being open for whenever I would give you a gift, you would kind of look at like a clothing gift, right?
Yeah.
You were very hesitant, right? But just being open, to
Mm.
other possibilities, right? And to just kind of learning, what that uncomfortable feeling is like, and just appreciating, having gratitude for the moment that you're in,
Mhm.
uh, surrounded by other people, right? So, because it's not just for you, uh, it's also for them.
Absolutely.
It's like, if you have so much value, you're not only hurting yourself, but you're not passing your knowledge, and your happiness,
Right.
and your joyful feelings, your laughter, to other people,
Mhm.
so, and other people get to learn from you and enjoy you, right? Because you're,
Yeah.
just i couldn't I couldn't imagine, just continuing going to these conferences, and because I saw a very different person at home versus whenever we were out and about,
Yeah.
right? And I'm like, wow, she changes like 180 degrees whenever she's out and about. And people don't get to enjoy you, your true
Mm.
you,
Yeah.
and how you are at home,
Yeah.
So, because you are very passionate, about what you do and what and you're a great connector. You connect other people to people that, have other value to add, so,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, just being open to be uncomfortable, being open to sharing
Yeah.
yourself to others, right?
No, I
So,
think you hit the nail on the head, because absolutely, I think that's step one.
mm,
Being open to the change, being open to, um, because it doesn't matter what's being taught or who you're around if you're not open to the change and making the committed decision to take that change, and knowing that I there's so much more of me, right? So not identifying myself as such, where I labeled myself as, oh, that's just how I am, that's just who I am, which is so far from the truth, right? And so, it's a great transition into the second part of another killer of success, which is goes hand in hand with living in the past, is negative self-talk,
mhm.
right? What are the statistics? I think they say like 80% of the thoughts and the things that we say to ourselves is negative.
90%.
Is it 90%?
Yeah.
Is that crazy? And so it's like you have to be intentional and you have to have strategies to like reprogram your subconscious mind with positive information and positive people, because the natural tendency is for your mind to creep up with negative things.
I mean, your mind's there to react, right? So your mind's there to, if you're gonna, out hunting for food, is there to watch out for things that are gonna jump at you, right? So is there for sympathetic nervous system, which reacts and acts, and so gives you that energy, right? So, but and then like a lot of people have said, it's like most of your thoughts are the same thoughts that you think every day. It's like, okay, well, if we're thinking negative thoughts every day, and we're thinking the same thoughts every day, like 90% of them, and then they say you can only control about 10% of what happens to you, and 90% is out of your control. So the odds are not for you. The odds are against you, right off the bat.
Right.
So kind of realizing that the odds are not for you, then you have to change. You have to subconsciously change your subconscious mind every day.
Right. It's
Like
a daily ritual, right?
daily ritual. Yeah. So continuously train your mind, to start thinking a lot more positive, a lot more constructive, versus just kind of reacting, to everything. And now, of course, you can open up your phone and
Right.
it's like your mind start to race, with all the negative thoughts, right?
So I know you mentioned in the past, meditation, gratitude practices, walking, listening to podcasts, reading books. Those are all ways of planting positive things into your mind and your physical body and being. Did I leave anything else out?
Man, I talk to myself.
You talk to yourself.
You talk
Okay.
about negative self-talk. I talk about positive self-talk.
Yeah.
To myself. So yeah, you can only pray so much. You can only have gratitude so much. You can only walk so much. You can
Yeah.
only meditate so much. But throughout the day, whenever I'm not taking my 30-minute walks and doing all of this, what happens in between
Right.
the morning and the evening whenever I
Right.
take my walks, right? So just throughout the day, continuously, either have positive thoughts, complimenting myself, for feeling great that particular day, for just having little pieces of gratitude throughout the day, right? It's almost like that's what I do pretty much on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So because I know, and it wasn't that long ago, I know how I feel when I don't do that. And I get into that same negative mindset and I start feeling horrible, right? And I start reacting or overreacting or not talking at all, being very quiet. So I know what happens.
Yeah.
And that affects not only me, but you guys, right? And the whole family. So, and that affects my whole day and all my employees. And so it's very contagious, so negativity, of course, is very contagious, but also depression is very contagious. Anxiety is very contagious. That's what I've come to learn, especially now after COVID.
Yeah.
So if you're noticing one person is not well,
Right.
so that tends to affect a whole lot of people.
No, I love that.
What are you doing nowadays to kind of help with your self-talk?
Self-talk. One of the things I like to do is I used to have issues with how I perceived myself, right? Everybody could tell me, you're doing great, you're awesome, you're inspiring. But there's a small part of me that felt like I wasn't doing enough.
Mhm.
Like that there was still like, I barely feel like I've scratched the surface. And there was just so much more I wanted to do. And then I just could do so much more that I felt like I wasn't fully utilizing my potential. And so I started writing out the things that I would have to do daily wins. And it's a silly thing, but I actually will tell myself the 3 wins of the day, right? We
Mhm.
do 3 wins and 3 challenges, but a 3 win of a self reflection. So even if I barely did anything, but I felt like, today I woke up and I feel really, my energy is really good and that I am pain free.
Mhm.
That's a big win for me.
Mhm.
And that wasn't a win until I went through a lot of pain and physical pain in my body to then be able to wake up and be like, oh my God, I'm full of energy. I have no pain in my body because I took that for granted.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, when that went away because I experienced it for 2 years, I'm like, holy crap, that's a big win
Mhm.
that I didn't even consider a win, that I just woke up and I feel good.
Mhm. Mhm.
Other wins, like sometimes we think that a win has to be like, oh, you had to do something super productive. No, that was a win because I did lifestyle modifications that attributed and I did the inner work so that the pain would go away. Right.
Mhm.
And then I had energy. So that was a big win. Right. Other wins that I would say, for example, there's a lot of wins that you can do in your life, but even a win as simple as, today I actually called somebody that I wasn't feeling too positive about and we worked it out. Right.
Mhm.
And so, say for instance, uh, it's somebody like my mom is like the one that, I talk about my mom, she's my rock. And, but we had a very different dynamic growing up. Right. And so she was always very strict. She says things, and the Asian culture, they're very blunt sometimes, the older generation, and they don't do it out of hate, or they don't do it out of in a condescending purpose, but
Mhm.
it comes across very hurtful, right?
Mhm.
And so I don't know if anyone's Vietnamese. Usually, a lot of the Vietnamese, they can relate to this. You'll come in and you haven't seen your family member or somebody for a long time, and they'll just flat out to your face say, "You look old" or "You look fat." And I'm like, "Oh, well, thanks." Like, what do you say to that, right? But I've learned that that's it. They don't mean it out of harm, right? They
Mhm.
just they say it so that maybe you can do some lifestyle modification. There's truth to it sometimes, right?
Mhm.
But a win for me would be like, okay, that hurt my feelings. And now I can talk to my mom. And if she says something that really hurts my feelings, that I could tell her honestly. And it's like, okay, mom, I know you mean good and you say it so that I could change in a positive manner, but your delivery really hurts my feelings.
Mhm.
Oh, I didn't know that. Like, that's how I've always talked. Like, that's just how I speak. Well, mom, if you speak like that, it really hurts me a lot. Right.
Mhm.
So that's a big win for me to be able to have that conversation. This is 40 something years later that I can now tell my mom, mom, yeah, could you deliver it a different way
Mhm.
so I could receive it a different way? I understand where you're coming from. I know you're just trying to help. Right.
Mhm.
But that's a big win because my mode of communication has been able to improve. And so if you have somebody in your life that maybe you're hurt, it's a best friend, it's a family member, they said something that really hurt your feelings, and maybe it's just a misunderstanding. Can you imagine years of pain and hurt over a miscommunication of how something was delivered and something was received?
Mhm.
That's a big win for me, right? So I cope with, and that's part of the self negative talk, right? How do you manage with that? Well, let's review. How has this person really showed up in my life in other ways besides the message that they delivered? How have they been the rest of my life, and how have their actions been, right? So it takes some reflection for me to do those daily wins. Another daily win that I would say is an example that's kind of off tangent, but that's all part of your success journey, right? Is also kind of like how expectations,
Mhm.
right? Expectations are a big one, right? And expectations are something that we put upon somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't deliver, whether that's your business partner, whether that's your spouse, whether that's your children, but it's people that are you really love, right? And that they're a big part of your life. And if you set a level of expectation on them and then they don't meet those expectations, you get disappointed,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, if you recalibrate that,
and the disappointment is usually bigger if it's a family member and it's more hurtful.
yeah,
usually.
absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of that stems, like all of these negative emotions and thoughts sometimes stem from stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you maybe not be able to change them. But if you changed how you perceive that or your level of expectation from that, then automatically you feel better about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that's a big win because it's like, okay, I'm doing the inner work because I'm changing the way I think and the emotion that gets triggered because I put that expectation on that person. That person could be the exact same person and have done nothing wrong, but because my level of expectation of that person was set a certain way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I disappointed myself.
Their expectations might not be as high as yours, or they might be even higher than yours, and you're still not seeing eye to eye.
Correct.
Right. So the expectation has to be perfectly on both sides.
Which never happens.
Yeah. So that's
right.
Someone's going to get upset. Right. So
right.
like someone's going to get disappointed. Someone's going to be sad because you or both have expectations, or the other person might not have any expectations.
Right.
You know, they might just be free flowing, you know, type of person, you know, so that doesn't have those, you know, standards,
right.
Like strict standards, you know, like you used to have. Right. So it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Right. Very difficult for someone to have expectations because you can't change a person.
You can't change a person regardless of what you do and try, you know?
And, you know, I've said this to you before.
You can't.
And it took me a long time, right?
19 years.
to realize that. And it's like, yeah, you can deliver it a certain way, like, you know, your knowledge or the guidance or whatever. And I realized that I can't change you. Like,
and the
I'm not going to be able to do it.
The sooner you realize that, the less disappointed you'll be.
Yeah, because I used to continue to, you know, nicely, I would say it and I would say it again. And then I would mention it a different way. And then I was like, it's not going through her head, or she just doesn't want to listen to me. But it's like, I can't physically, I'm not inside your body.
You're not.
You know, it's like,
we're two totally different beings.
Yeah.
Right.
So, no, and that's where a lot of the, you know, disappointment, the sadness, the arguments, you know, come, you know, because you try to change a person how you want to be.
Exactly.
You know?
I think that's one of the things. It's like you have a level of standard and expectations in your world, and you would hope and want somebody else that you want the best for, that you love for, to do the same. And when they don't follow through with the same level, and you experience this with loved ones, you experience this with patients, you experience this, it's hard to understand that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things Tony Robbins always teaches about is trade your expectations for appreciation, right? In any situation or any relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can switch that, and realize that you will never be able to ultimately change somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
You can deliver everything to them and provide, but that person innately has to be the one to change,
mm-hmm.
right? And it's the sooner that you can trade that level of expectation of, then, you know, you'll minimize some of that disappointment. Otherwise, it's an ongoing process, right? So let's shift gears to number 3 of the top success killers. What do you think one of those would be?
I would say,
of course, there's many, but
I would say being in your comfort zone all the time and not wanting more.
I
Is
think
that what
that's,
we?
yeah, I
You
would
know,
agree on that one.
this is like completely live shows that we do here. Like, and let me just tell you about today, right? So, I took a shower and, I do my thing and, I come out and I was like, okay, well, I wonder what Hua's gonna, come up with, on what we're gonna talk about. So she comes out 10:55 a.m. Central Standard Time, 5 minutes before the show. And she is great at free flowing. Like, she can, I mean, she goes up on stage free flowing most of the time and she does awesome. I think that's one of her many superpowers, right? And, but she comes out and she's like, okay, let's maybe talk about, the success and, what can kill success. And I was like, okay, well, we got 3 minutes now. So,
Let's go.
and she busted out with five, like within 30 seconds. I'm like, man, I agree with all of them, So I remember that one, so just being very comfortable, like we were,
Yeah.
so we were very comfortable and we thought we were doing great. We were just comfortable with ourselves, pretty much. We were not doing much of community. We were not helping others. We were not, having that bigger footprint that we always talk about. And we're, seeing patients. We were helping patients, and we love doing that. But just the last 7 years or 8 years, it's like whenever we started to think so much bigger, right? And then you started to, get more comfortable with getting out there and speaking to people, besides me.
If I spoke to you.
If that.
Just kidding.
No, and that's like what we said, the previous episode, the last, 8 or 9 years, that's how we've, grown exponentially because of that. We got out of our comfort zone and now we enjoy it quite a bit more. Let's see what's another different thing that we can do and how we can, continue to grow both personally and professionally, so, but yeah, it's just kind of stepping out, because I feel comfortable too. I was thinking very small, but I was good, back then. And now I mean, I can't imagine myself not trying to expand because I'm going to be able to help less people. Right. And those people need and depend on us. Right. Because a lot of these people are not able to help themselves. Like what we talked about, in another episode. So, but yeah, it's just kind of getting out there and I'm very proud of you for doing that
Thank
and
you,
kind of for
Laura.
realizing that. And now you're doing great, and you're speaking in front of, hundreds of people on, many stages. And so, and then people are looking up to you and you're mentoring people, so, but yeah, can you imagine if you wouldn't have thought about that and how many less people you would have helped? And, you have to step back and kind of think about that.
I'm so grateful and blessed that, I was able to keep pushing out of my comfort zone and having someone like you as my biggest cheerleader and my biggest support base. You encourage me, but yet you let me kind of find my way. And I appreciate that. And I think you see a lot of potential in me. You saw a lot of potential in me that I really didn't see in myself, right? And as we were getting into other ecosystems and mentors saw something in me. And the more that I kept hearing the same message, it took time for me to believe it, right? And I think for me to act upon it and make the decisions to take the leap of faith in order to keep pushing out of my comfort zone. It's funny how people say it takes one. You know how many positive things it takes and one negative thing? It's like one negative. If someone tells you one negative thing about you, it takes about 16 people of positive messages to negate that one negative.
Mm.
Right. Now, imagine a lot of the times when I was younger, I always had the belief of like, wow, I was doing a lot of different things. But if I heard something negative or I felt like I wasn't good enough in some form, how much more positive things had to be embedded in me for me to believe that, I was worth or, I had the confidence to move to the next level. So even in today's date, I mean, as much personal development and as much as I've pushed out of my comfort zone, it's an ongoing journey.
Mhm.
And it's not to say that it's linear by any means. I think one of the bigger things that people don't realize is as you're getting out more in the public eye and that you have people who rely on you and who, we mentor and people who've seen us as a source of inspiration, sometimes it is even harder to be vulnerable to say that, hey, I have days where I feel absolutely I've gone back to square one and then I've got to build my way back up and build my confidence. So it's not like once you've reached a certain level of worth or confidence that it doesn't go backwards, that you have to continue back in that journey. So it yo-yos, right? And it's something that you have to do those rituals. All of a sudden those things no longer happen. Oh no, every day is a new day,
Mhm.
right? And things happen all the time that are good and bad. And so I think it's important, when you were talking about playing it safe, man, that's absolutely something that it's easy to revert back to
Mhm.
when you start going up the ladder both in your personal and professional journey, and then you feel like, man, if I keep climbing the ladder, am I going to fall back down? Absolutely. You're going to climb, fall, climb, fall, climb, fall. And you hope that you climb two and fall one, and sometimes you climb two and you fall four and you got to go way back up. And that's okay. I want to just share that if you're listening in and whoever you're watching, whether you know them on social media, whether it's us, whether it's somebody else, we've met a lot of and enough successful people to know that behind closed doors and in their personal life, everybody still struggles with something,
Mhm.
right? Everybody,
Mhm.
regardless of what pillar of your life. So it's an ongoing journey of, making sure that you build up that self confidence, you build up that positive, you know, who you are as a person from the inner core out, right?
Mhm.
Not going back to your past, not letting those things trigger emotions from today, focusing on the present is something that I have to continually, and I want to improve myself, right? And so if there's opportunities for me to go and expand to be more present now and not go and revisit some of these emotions or habits from my past that impact my present and my future, those are things I personally always still work on. I'm
Mhm.
still working on that myself.
Mhm.
I've come long ways, but I've still got more ways to go. Right. And I think that's important to continue, you know, pushing yourself out of the comfort zone. You hear it all the time, but I honestly will tell you that's where the growth really happens. And when you go on cruise control, there's a level of less excitement. And I think having excitement ignited, you have a much bigger why.
Mhm.
When you're like, everything's good. Like, I don't want to just be good though. Like, I just think that I like every single day, um, it's like you have that opportunity to make a bigger imprint,
Mhm.
right? And I think if we get excited about something, whether it's pulled by inspiration and passion, or it's fueled by something that you're so against because it's painful, right? That it's like, I can't imagine things are happening and I want to create change for that. Whatever the fuel source is, like we talked about in the previous episodes, that's a good enough reason to keep pushing forward, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was just thinking about um, pushing yourself, expanding, not playing it safe, being uncomfortable, helping more people. I'm like, man, that's the reason we did the show, right? And we want we want to help people, right? Because we want to help more people. And because we've gone through a whole transformation, from not being in a good space to not being successful to now being in a much better space and having some success,
Mm-hmm.
right? And all those things that you mentioned fit what this show is about.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting out there, and I would highly recommend people that are just going back to number one, uh, you know, uh, or number two, whatever number that was, but getting out there and speaking to people, creating just a show, and just about whatever you want, right?
Have a
And
voice.
yep, and or have just a journal that you go on, a video journal, just for 5 or 10 minutes, and then just watching yourself grow like in front of your eyes, right? So from day one to year one, right? And watching that you progress, watching some of those videos, because we go back and watch some of the videos that we make, right? So we
Mhm.
can of course improve, uh, but also it's almost like this show, for me, I've told you this before, it's almost like counseling at the same time, right? Because it's difficult to kind of get one block of time just speaking to you directly,
Mhm.
right? And just talking about what's on our mind without any interruptions, right?
Mhm.
It's very difficult nowadays for everyone, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, it's that's why I love listening to other people, with podcasts and doing the show,
Right.
because we're passionate about helping others, and just sharing some of the nuggets, and just
Mhm.
kind of creating value somehow, and then maybe if someone's listening, kind of partnering up and doing some bigger charity work stuff, or that we can actually be a part of, right?
Right. You never know who's watching. There's Agent. I saw your post. If you're listening into our podcast today, I just had a call with him a few days ago, and he made a Facebook post today. And I haven't told you this, but I'll share it with you. But he goes, about 3 years ago, he saw one of our posts, and I refer to you as lover. And he was caught off guard because he's like, oh my God, that's her husband. Yet she calls him lover. And he had been in a marriage and for, I don't know, 19 years. And it was almost like he goes, I want that. I want to have that. And not only does she call him lover, she does this publicly. Like, who does that? But he had followed my journey ever since then.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because of that lover first. He goes, I so crave and want a relationship like that. Because he felt like he was living on cruise control, that the relationship, yes, they've been together 19 years, but it was stagnant. It almost felt like we were just roommates. And so when he reached out to me and he had that conversation, he goes, I don't, I'm like one of those silent stalkers who just watch you on Facebook and listen to you and watch you. But you've really
We have a lot of
inspired.
those.
But you've really inspired me. And this is now 3 years, and this was 3 years ago. And he found somebody
Uh-huh.
who is now his love partner, his life partner. They have this ignite, like this whole ignite, like igniting and transformation
Mm-hmm.
of a new love and passion of relationship and business,
Mm-hmm.
and what they do to impact other people's and want to help others. And all the pillars and all the things we talk about, that's what they do now.
Mm.
And he just made a public post about it this morning and thanked me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just had the conversation. So I only say that because I want you to know you don't know who's watching and listening to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, putting yourself out there, and even if it's just one other person, but can you imagine if you influence and impact and inspire that one person who is now going to change their life to go create this ripple effect we keep talking about, right? And he is now find his life and love partner that they go and coach other people,
Mhm.
right, on business and relationships because they were inspired by us.
Mm.
And this is when I read his post this morning on Facebook, I'm like, oh my gosh, right? And now he calls his partner lover in public.
Awesome. Do I know
So
this person?
you do not,
Oh, okay.
but I'll
Okay.
show you the Facebook post later.
Okay. We do have a question here. How do you get yourself out of a funk in your business, especially when you have those seasons of setting up systems and structures? You want to answer that one?
You go ahead.
And so we all get in a funk, right? So that's pretty much a given, right? So um, but because I know this particular person, it's um, guidance from other people, of course, and that have done what you want to do. That's what we usually talk about, and it doesn't have to be a particular mentor that you've met before. It can be someone on a podcast and things like that. But I think kind of learning from them for sure.
Mhm.
What are they doing? What has made them successful on what you want to do on the same lane that you want to be in? Um, but also, having a clear goal and understanding, being laser focused on what you want to do. So not doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. If you really want to figure it out, you have to be laser focused, right? And a lot of the time, what I do, say if there's a question, right? And like I would say 80% of the time, if I really want to solve and I'm struggling with something, I really, really, really want to understand the question and the pain point, right? 80% of that time, I'm just doing that. I'm focusing on that particular task or problem. Um, and I would say probably 20% of my time or less, I'm trying to figure out a solution.
Mhm.
So you really have to be focused on the problem at hand, why that occurred, what are the steps that led to that problem or issue or that you're trying to solve. And I would say the majority of time should be spent there. And then 10-20% of the time is coming up with the solution. And I think if people really understood what the issue was at hand and the solution won't take that long to solve,
Mhm.
right? Because you have a clear understanding on if you want to set up those systems, uh, you really have to understand what the problem is. What is the problem that you have at hand, and what led to it, and if it's efficiency, if it's product that's not going well, and then research that, and then a little bit at a time, I would come up with a solution.
No, I agree. I absolutely agree with that. Right, having true clarity on what the challenge and the problem is at hand, so that number one, you come up with solutions more effectively, and number two, that those challenges don't keep repeating themselves. Right. I think other things that I've incorporated when we get into a funk, especially if it's personal or business related, right? Is number one, I write. I always talk about writing everything down because keeping everything up here makes it harder to visualize and come up with more clear resolution. So I think writing things out and then also not being afraid to ask for help, right? Being open enough to say, okay, these are some of the challenges that I'm experiencing. And if you can find someone in a similar business that you know is doing well, right? That might be able to have an open conversation to share some nuggets in that particular business,
Mhm.
right? To help you brainstorm some ideas. Brainstorming ideas with other people, especially if they're familiar with the line of work or business that you're in, moves the needle a whole lot faster if you can find somebody who can relate to your business,
Mhm.
right? To come up with solutions. Now, if it's not a exact same business, but they have good business sense, maybe on a high level, they can give you some advice and resources. So I would definitely do that, to not be one to just try to bury all of your problems yourself and try to resolve it by yourself. And that's been a hard thing for me to do, is to ask for help because of my pride or my ego. But I have also learned that that's been the best thing for me, is when I am in the funk, that I do need to surround myself with people and I do need to ask for help.
Mhm.
And that will get me out of the funk to, and then I will always get some, even if they can't directly listen or give me advice, just to have somebody who cares, who can listen to me, to have me verbally express the things that I'm coming at and having issues with. That takes a lot of load off of my mind,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes I solve my own problems, right? But just expressing it to somebody else, you come up with your own solutions sometimes, right? But I think it's important to change your environment when you're out of your funk. It's easy to want to stay at home behind a screen, right? Be on your laptop, computer, phone, behind a digital device. And I will tell you that will 10 times spiral your mental health even faster downward, right? Get out physically, change your environment, get out with nature, talk to people, try to help somebody else. Focus your energy, channel your energy out of the problem space and see if you can help somebody else, even if it's not correlated with anything you're doing. But that, just helping someone, will make you feel better and give you a better headspace and put you in a better emotional and mental space. And I think that will give you better clarity on some of the things that you can, come up with resolution as well.
I don't know if you've ever seen me right before the show. Um, I run really, really fast in place because I know the blood flow makes me think a little bit faster and a little bit
Mm.
cleaner. And I think, some events make you do that, so, and then you do a bunch of exercise and then you just put your thoughts down on paper.
Yeah, that's
Right.
right. That's
And
right.
so, and that's what I like to do, like right before the show, like, 5 minutes before the show. Um, you might be in here and I'm over there, and I'm doing like really, really fast running in place, so,
And you have to
but
find out what works for you, right?
yeah, and I mean that tends to work for me to kind of get the thoughts flowing, instead
Mm.
of me just kind of concentrating on the, you know, just jumbled thoughts that I might have
Mhm.
in my mind, right?
It's funny because I do the exact opposite.
Mm,
I do everything to slow myself down as much before a speaking engagement, before we go live.
mhm,
I'm taking my sweet little time. I'm relaxing. I'm doing my deep breathing. I'm taking my shower. I'm listening to my inspirational videos in there while I'm getting ready. And then I come out, I'm just chill. Like, I'm the total opposite. Like, I go on the very slow for me to have clarity before I get on. I do my deep breathing, and like I don't get myself all excited right before.
mhm.
So see, different things work for
Yep.
different people, right?
So if we can move on to number four. I
Absolutely.
remember number four, or one of the five. Was it? Hold on. I'm trying to think. Comparing
Comparing.
yourself to others, right?
Oh,
So
yes, that's definitely a success killer, is comparing yourself to others, or even comparing yourself to another phase of your life,
yeah.
right? Like your past self or whatnot, right?
Hmm.
Or a past achievement or whatnot, right? Comparing yourself to others, definitely not productive.
I used to do that a lot. Like, at the very, I would say actually whenever I was growing up, so, and I mean, at my school, everyone compares themselves, right? But if you really, really want to succeed faster, I think just looking at yourself to see how far you can go, and just having those blinders, from the race horses,
Mhm.
and just going full steam ahead. I think that's what I would do.
Yeah, I think it's great to see others and they be a source of inspiration for you
Mhm.
to move the needle forward. But to compare yourself, like, if we're beginning and you're comparing someone else who's, we talk about like if they're chapter 20 and you're in chapter 1 and 2 and you're trying to achieve and be where they are, you haven't put in the work that someone else has been. You haven't gone through the life experiences and the things that they've gone through. So you have no idea what that person has gone through to be where they are, right? And sometimes social media, what people depict, it may not always be the truth behind closed doors, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes with today's, God knows there's so many filters, there's so much fake stuff out there. You don't even know what's real anymore, right? So,
we we have a friend. He's super smart guy, and he does everything, like everything he's putting out there is not him, is AI, right? Whenever he said that, I mean, he started doing that last year, right? And he's like, anyone that you see out there, it's not me. It's all, virtual reality. It's all AI made, and I was like, wow. And how about the comment? Well, everything's gonna be AI. Everything is gonna be downloaded. I'm gonna be speaking, 30 minutes, 1 hour a day, to my computer, and the AI is gonna capture all my information. And so in the next couple of months, everything is going to be answered, by AI. So being very careful, on some of the stuff that you're saying, and I think that is amazing.
it
Some of the
is.
stuff that he's creating and doing right now, and I was like, wow, he's thinking so much bigger, and because he wants to be very efficient. He's already efficient guy, but he wants to take it to the next level. And then he has, a little child, so,
Yeah.
and he wants to spend more time with the family, but now he's going to have this particular AI, just run his whole show, mostly, just
Mhm.
everything online pretty much. Of course, he's going to do some of the back
Right.
end stuff, but I thought that was pretty cool. But me comparing it to him is like, what am I doing? It's like I can't be comparing myself to him.
No.
So I
But
mean,
but you can leverage motivation. Like, wow, we want to learn a lot of those things. And as we're growing, it's like those are all sources of inspiration for us to expand our knowledge base and expand the capabilities and efficiencies for ourselves. But there's a difference between utilizing inspiration versus comparison, where you look at somebody else and then feel like you're not doing enough. I think that's where the killer is, right? The killer is sometimes when you're using comparison where you feel like you're not good enough.
mhm,
That's where it's harmful, instead of using comparison per se as a level of inspiration to help you grow even better, right?
mhm, mhm,
But people don't always understand that, the only person you need to compare yourself is, you just want to improve who you are from yesterday
mhm,
and be a better version. We always talk about better version of yourself, the best version of yourself. And it's always evolving. There's version 2.0 of you, version 3.0 of you, version 4.0 of you, right? Which can be inspired by a lot of other people,
mhm,
right? But when you compare somebody else and you feel like, I haven't done enough, I'm not good enough, they're so far along, I'll never get there. Or, you all of a sudden you look at your real life compared to someone's fake life on social media sometimes. And then you feel like, oh man, but sometimes it's not a true depiction, you know?
Mhm.
And so I was listening to a podcast, Ed Milet the other day, and he was talking about, I was at this Italian restaurant and I'm seeing this family. They've got two kids. The kids are acting up a hot mess, right? They're throwing food, they're yelling at each other. One kid's crying and throwing a tantrum. The mom and dad are now yelling at each other because one person's upset at the other person. And then all of a sudden, like, somebody was like, "Oh, can we take a picture?" And all of a sudden, they put on this perfectly happy, pose, and everyone's like super happy and things. And then he was like, if they had only seen what really was happening here this whole time, right? And so it's really hard to kind of say what's the true depiction. You think of someone having this perfect life or perfect family, or they're so successful, but you don't know what they're going through. And would you really want to trade places? You don't even know that, right? And so to be able to appreciate where you are in your journey right now as you are, but then also knowing that, there's another level in you. There's more growth and there's improvement that you can have in every area. As good as you are, wherever you are, the secret is to appreciate where you are, be grateful where you are and what you have and who you are, but then also continue to improve as you go along the way.
Mhm.
Right. And that's the secret, right? But that comparison piece is something that we all fall guilty of sometimes and be like, oh, I wish this and that. And you're like, nope, nope, nope. That negative self space, right? You got to catch yourself because it can get dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, we know that, social media, comparing ourselves to the social media friends and, people that we know that's not true, right? So if we say, if the research shows 80 to 90% of our thoughts are negative, but 99.999% of social media is super positive, I mean, what's going on there, right?
Right.
So it's just like, yeah, you're loading yourself up with comparison overload
Mm-hmm.
on social media, right? So, but most of our thoughts are not good thoughts,
Right.
and most of our thoughts are the same thoughts.
Isn't that crazy, right?
It's like, okay. And that's why, I try not to do as much social media as I can. Of course, I still want to, see what's going on, but yeah, it's
And
like,
since we are on the topic of social media, I think that's something that is a good topic because we had mentioned last time about social media, and that's something for myself too because I get a little bit concerned about getting on social media a lot. I'm usually mainly on Facebook, and we have all these other platforms, but on one side, I want exposure just to share and knowing that maybe I can reach more people in the virtual world of social media, people from all over the world, right, that follow and listen in. But then it gets very easy to be too distracted into this rabbit hole of listening and watching everybody else's pages and comments and things like that. And so there is a balance. And that's something that I want to improve on personally for myself is spending a little bit less time on, Facebook or social media and reading everybody else's things. There's a part that I want to engage with people, especially people who are making comments, and I want to,
mhm,
I want to engage with them. And there's communities within these social media platforms that I'm a part of, right? But there's also a fine balance of making sure that not too much of my time is getting into the rabbit hole of social media.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so that's something I'm still working on myself.
mhm.
Yeah.
So do you want, I don't even know what the last one was. Do you want to, what was the last fifth topic?
What do you think it would be if you had to make it up? What would you think? And then I'll tell you what I had in my mind as the fifth. Obviously, there's plenty of success killers, but these were the ones that I thought were some of the top five.
Um, I would say probably not wanting more and kind of staying at your own pace and on
So
cruise
you're pretty
control.
close. You're pretty close. So what I was thinking is, so most people, what happens is you're pretty close. I think that's pretty good. Um, what I would say is most people take their foot off the gas once they get a taste of success. So
Mm,
what usually happens is, whether it's a fitness goal, whether it's a money success goal or whatnot, they set a goal or they feel like they've really achieved and done very well. All the work that went in and all the thought and everything that took to get to that success. And then after that gets hit, people usually start, like you said, cruise control, take their foot off of the gas. And then all of a sudden, things go backwards again. Or it grows, but it doesn't grow at the same rate, right? It starts going linear, not quite as much because the level of hunger die down, or the actions, the habits and actions that were consistently done in order to reach that level of success all of a sudden gets like tapered down. And that's very common in both fitness, that's very common in business, right? And so having it's like those daily calling, meeting with people, the getting out there to conferences, getting out there, building your teams, having the culture done. It's very easy for us to take our hand off the ball and our eyes off the ball and be like, okay, that's on cruise control. I'm going to pivot and do other things. And then all of a sudden things don't go as well. And that's really easy to happen in all of our businesses or any business. And also your personal. In relationships, the same way. Sometimes people get married or they have kids. And all of a sudden the effort and the things that they did for each other all of a sudden die down. They no longer are doing the same things that got you this to be together in the same place. Or, and I think that would be a big fifth killer that I think a lot of us are guilty of. And I would say I'm guilty of it myself.
No, I think, yeah, I mean, initially in our careers, I think we mentioned we were getting comfortable and I did lay off the gas pedal, so, but because my goals were met, right? So I'm like, okay, well, I was thinking too small. Goals were very puny. And that's something that we're, not making those mistakes anymore about just setting puny goals, much bigger goals, much bigger visions. That way, once you reach your goal, it's like you can't really lay off the foot off the pedal, right? Because you haven't reached it, right? So you're on your way to it. There's a much longer journey to reach your goal. It might be attainable if you continue, pushing, hard work, partnering up, dedication, continue with the bigger vision, seeking your mentors like we talked about, continuing to learn. So all that is compiled to try to reach your goal, right? And I think we talked about it in a previous, episode. It's like the moonshot goals, right? So we want to shoot for the moon with some of these things. So I think that's probably one of the ways that I won't be reaching for the pedal, to laying off the pedal, I should say, as much, right? So,
but it's those small daily habits that produce the result.
Yeah, and you can have wins throughout, your goals, but it's, if your goal is to, for some of the younger group here that joins us sometimes, they're in high school, and if their goal is to finish up high school, that's a puny goal, in my opinion, right?
It's a milestone, but not the end goal, right?
Yes, but if that's your goal, I mean, that's your goal of your education. Like there's so much other things to learn, right? Yeah, you can go to college if you want, but seeking, further education, continuing to learn, right? So having a trade, having a great skill, continue to learn versus just, finishing up high school, finishing up college
and just attaining a degree or title, right? I think having acumen, like actual skill sets that can be applicable to real life in any any profession, like communication. We talk about communication, effective communication as a young individual who can improve on that.
Mhm.
That's a very valuable skill set,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Working in teams, whether you're a leader or working well with other people, having people skills is important,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Communication skills, people skills, managing your own emotions where you're not being triggered.
Yeah, and that's because degrees nowadays, they're getting less and less important. For some of these big positions,
Mm-hmm.
right? So having those particular skills, having a trade, I know some high schools now have, you can go in as a student in, ninth grade and learn a trade. By getting out of there, you can intern while you're in high school, and you can have a great position already getting out of high
Mm-hmm.
school.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's going to be the future. I think, a lot of the colleges, because the price is getting out of hand. This colleges are a huge business, right?
It's getting
So
ridiculous.
it's, I mean, just look at, Tulane,
Oh,
where you
yeah.
went to school. I mean, just to go there, it's about 400,000 now, just to kind of graduate, with a good degree. If you go,
Thank goodness
it's
I had a scholarship, but but people who are going now, if you don't have a scholarship, I mean, these private institutions and some of these Ivy Leagues and top universities are charging, I mean, it's a heavy, heavy price, right?
Mhm.
And to get a doctorate, whether a dentist, an optometrist, a MD degree, whatever these higher degrees, I mean, imagine having debt of $300 to $500,000, and you come out and you're unsure if that's the career you want to pursue, right? And we're seeing a lot of that.
Yep. And then they can't pay the loan. And then after they can't pay the loan, of course, they get bad credit. Um, it really kind of slows down your growth, right?
And
Instead of speeding it up, what you thought was going to happen, it dramatically slows you down.
right.
So
And I'm a big believer of both, right? Formal and self education, like we talked about. But I think it's very important that you're just not looking for a degree and not understanding what the real work involved is. To not have interned and be in the work environment and talk to other people in that field and get a real life experience of what that profession or what that career looks like. A lot of people are just basing it off of their salary. It's a good title. It sounds like that's what I would like to do. And they go through all these years of education and put so much money in it. And they don't even really understand what they're going to be doing
Mhm.
until they get out into the workforce and then realize, oh my God, this is not what I thought I signed up for.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. But okay, so let's tally it up for the 5. Let's do a summary of the 5 top ones. Do you remember?
I remember we just went through them. Go
No,
ahead.
I think that was really good. I think that last one is something we don't talk about as often, but I think it is a common one because we just take our foot off the gas and we stop doing the things that brought us the successful relationship with the health, the successful business, and then expanding. Because then you start reverting back. You're like, wait a minute, I was doing good, and then now I'm like kind of losing traction, and I got to get back on, right? So those are things that are really so living in the past is number 1 killer, right?
Mhm.
Number 2 killer is negative self-talk. Number 3 is
I don't remember number 3.
pushing beyond your comfort zone, right? Making sure you're not just playing it safe is
Mhm.
killer number 3. Number 4 is, you said it.
Go ahead.
Number 4 is comparing. Remember, do not compare yourself to others. And number 5 is continue putting your foot on that gas. right? To not just get too complacent. But in the same token, always celebrate your wins, enjoy the journey. Yes, we, talk about big dreams. Yes, we talk about, moonshot goals, but, don't forget to celebrate the wins daily. I cannot emphasize gratitude and celebrating daily wins. Like that is a big part of the yes success, because not doing that is definitely part of the killer as well, right?
That's right.
Any other questions we have? If there's any questions up here, we would love to answer. How far in are we?
We're over.
We're over time.
So you just put them in the chat, and then we can either, direct message you, or we can just do it on the chat. So, but we really appreciate everyone. We get so many cool comments and questions and everything. So keep them coming. We do have a new YouTube channel, so if you can, go put the Living Gift Show on YouTube, and subscribe, and if you can hit the bell button whenever new episodes come out, we really appreciate all the support. And
if you can share with anybody who you may feel like can benefit from listening in. It's raw, it's unedited, it's whatever comes out
on the
that
fly.
day.
None of this is scripted like most of the shows, so this is like our life experiences on, what we've actually been through, right?
And we wanted to be interactive, right?
Yep.
Ask your questions. Here's Hour with Juan Jaime, right? Yep. And here you go. Ask us questions, what's on your mind. And like we said, topics rotate. So we know the day that we're going on, what we're going to be talking about.
5 minutes before the show. Maybe 10 sometimes.
So talking about pushing out of comfort zones, I'm pushing Jaime big time because he likes preparation.
Yes.
But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And again, tune in next time, Monday at 11 Central. Bye, everyone.